What's up, everyone? I'm here at my Week 5 NFL DraftKings picks. This time we're going to be taking a look at some sleepers and some value plays. If you haven't seen my main picks video, be sure to check the link in the top right or down in the description. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get into the picks. Okay, so the first guy I want to talk about is Quincy Enunwa. Now, before I get too far into the numbers and whatnot, it should be mentioned that today he missed practice. He's questionable to play this game on Sunday with a knee injury. Haven't heard much else on it. Anytime a player gets downgraded late in the week, and especially anytime a player doesn't play on Friday, or practice on Friday, I should say, it is definitely nerve-wracking. So we'll have to see where this leads. But right now, it looks like he's still going to play. But again, just make sure you keep tabs on it. If he doesn't play, obviously don't play him in your lineup. It's pretty simple. But I will tell you, this was a guy that I was looking at in cash games. Now I'll have to keep monitoring the situation and just see, what's going on. But I just wanted to mention that. Okay, so Enunwa, assuming he's somewhat healthy, is a really, really interesting and good play in my eyes for multiple reasons. Now, first off, he's had 6 targets in every single game this season, whether Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker have played or not. Now that Eric Decker is 100% fully out of this game, we know for a fact he's not going to play. He's dealing with a rotator cuff injury, I believe it is. Some form of a shoulder injury regardless. It really bumps up Quincy Enunwa's value. And because of that, and it really bumps up his value because of the way this game is expected to go. They're facing the Steelers, and both the Steelers and the Jets have very good run-stopping teams. They're very, very good up front, and they're expected to stop the run pretty effectively on both sides. So with that said, that's going to lead to a lot more passing, and in turn, with more passing, you're going to get more incompletions. Therefore, there's going to be more time on the clock. Therefore, this game is going to go on for a while, and they're going to run a lot more plays. I expect Ryan Fitzpatrick to easily throw the ball for over 40 times in this game, especially since, obviously the Steelers are the favorite in this game. The Jets, being the underdog, are expected to be down quite a few points. Therefore, they're going to have to be playing catch-up, which obviously means they're going to be passing the ball to get as many yards as they can at a time. So that's why I like Quincy Enunwa. I like the price. Fitzpatrick throws to his wide receivers more than anybody else in the NFL at 68% of the time. Now, Carson Wentz actually throws to wide receivers more, but Carson Wentz has been missing his tight end. Wentz has only played a handful of games. In the past 16-game period, nobody has thrown to their wide receivers more than Ryan Fitzpatrick. So, all in all, that's why I like Quincy Enunwa a lot, and I think just pace of play is going to be huge in this game. And assuming he does play, if we hear more that he's severely injured or whatever and he's not going to play or whatever, I'll have to look elsewhere in this price point. But right now, I think Quincy Enunwa is probably one of the better cash game options in this $45,000 to $5,000 range. So next up is Robert Woods, and this is odd just to even say this, but I am highly considering Robert Woods in a tournament situation this week. And it's so odd because I've never once played this guy in a single lineup, and I've never really even considered him. But ever since Sammy Watkins has gone down, he's been the number 1 wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills. And anytime you can get a number 1 wide receiver, even on a mediocre team like the Bills, for $3,900 on DraftKings, you have to consider him at least a little bit. I mean, in the 2 games that Sammy Watkins has not played this season, Robert Woods has 18 targets and well over 100 receiving yards. So, it's not a good matchup going up against the Rams. Any other team in the NFL, obviously not the Minnesota Vikings or the Denver Broncos, but any other defense out there, I probably would be considering him a lot more. But then again, his price would probably be a little bit higher. So we'll have to see. I mean, he's only projected at 11 points right now? Yeah, 11.4 points. At this price point, you really wouldn't need. If you got 10 points out of him at 3,900, you can't complain too much. I mean, obviously you'd want more. In the past 2 games, he's had 11 points and 15 points. He hasn't scored a touchdown this season. This could change, but honestly, in the red zone, the Bills are usually going to be looking towards LaShawn McCoy and maybe even Charles Clay, their tight end. So, I'm intrigued by Robert Woods. I think I'm going to play him in at least one tournament lineup. He's going to be very low owned at this price tag, especially at the 3,900 mark specifically. People are really going to be looking at James White in tournaments, I think, and maybe even looking down a little bit further, or maybe up a little bit, of course. So I don't think many people are going to have him even in tournaments, and he's intriguing me because, any guy who's getting 18 targets and is only below $4,000, I have to find a way if I can just at least get him in one lineup, even if it's a bad matchup. Okay, so the next guy I want to talk about is Jerick McKinnon, and he's a guy that you have to consider. I mean, at $4,000, he is a steal at this price. And this is certainly a week where when you're making and building your lineups, you really want to pay down at running back. This is a perfect situation to grab Jerick McKinnon. Now, it isn't, he's not the ideal play each and every week. I mean, the main reason he's not the ideal play is because Asiata is going to steal his goal line touches, which is going to take away from his value a lot. But last week he had a good game, and honestly, if DraftKings would release their pricing a little bit later in the week, Jerick McKinnon probably would be around the $5,000 to $5,500 range right now. So all things considered, the way that their defense plays, Jerick McKinnon is never going to be in a bad spot because of the way the game flow is going to be. They're always probably going to be ahead. It's going to be low scoring. They're going to want to kill some time. So Jerick McKinnon is always going to have some form of value, but at this price point, he's almost a must-play in cash games in my situation, or at least in my opinion, in this situation. So I like him a lot. Even though he's coming off an 18-point game, I'm not really expecting him to put that many points up. As long as he can put around his projected point total up around the 14 points or so, I'm going to be satisfied. Anything above 14 points is just gravy in my opinion. So Jerick McKinnon is pretty much a must-play and is 100% on the price. All right, so next up I have Sammie Coates, and this guy is a super interesting player in more respects than one. But number one is he's leading the league in air yards, and basically what that means is he's getting more yards per target than any other player in the NFL right now. And if you take a look at his numbers, I mean, it's pretty obvious why. In week 2, he had 2 receptions for 97 yards. In week 3, he had 3 receptions for 50 yards. And last week, it was his game with the most targets and receptions. That's 8 targets and 6 receptions for 79 yards. But, he's just getting so many yards per target, and that's why he's such an interesting play. At 3,600, he's not going to put up a ton of points per se. You're really banking on him having those 2 big plays a game. But he's a guy who's a legitimate threat for 3, 80-yard touchdowns every single time the Steelers are on the field. But, Sammie Coates has had at least 50 receiving yards in every game, and honestly, I think this is a great situation to stack Big Ben. Everybody's going to want Big Ben, Antonio Brown, and then so those 2 guys are going to be really expensive. Brown's $9,800 this week, but people are going to force him into their lineup. If you want to get somebody else in this game, probably your best option is Sammie Coates because he's going to give you that salary cap relief, but he's also going to give you that big play potential. He hasn't scored in the end zone yet. You could say he's due if you want to say that. But again, at this price point, these guys are so cheap, I keep mentioning that, they don't have to put up that many points to equal their value. So, I like Sammie Coates in tournaments. I'm not going to be playing him in cash games at all, but in tournaments, he's a guy you have to consider. And especially the way this game is going to unfold. I've already talked about it earlier. A lot of passing on both sides is expected, even if the Steelers get up big. So we'll see what happens. But this is a guy that I'm legitimately going to try to find a way in at least a few lineups. I'm not going to go, hot and heavy on him by any means. But I like Sammie Coates a lot. All right, so next up is A.J. Green for me. And it's pretty obvious this guy is not a value play. But at 8,900, it's hard to believe that A.J. Green can get overlooked. But he is going to get overlooked. And the reason why is Antonio Brown and Odell Beckham Jr. Everybody is so high on Antonio and Odell that A.J. Green is kind of in this kind of like no man's land spot on the pricing situation here in the wide receiver spot because he's in between the two. If you get Antonio Brown, you're not going to have enough cash left over to get A.J. Green. If you get Odell, you're probably going to want to spend down a little bit more because you're probably going to pay up for a defense and a quarterback as well. Whereas, if you could find a way to get A.J. Green in there and then maybe stack him with a couple of, $7,000 receivers and whatnot, and then sprinkle in a couple of $5,000, $4,000 guys or whatever, it is really the reason A.J. Green is going to be low owned, in my opinion, is going to be because of roster construction. Everybody's going to force Antonio Brown in their lineup. It's just going to happen. You have to have Antonio Brown each and every week, and especially in a situation like this where everything on paper is leading to a huge game for him. AJ Green is a great tournament option, and he's going to be a guy that I'm going to be considering. I mean, if you take a look at some of the numbers he's had this year, it's just bonkers. I mean, the least amount of targets he's had all year was 8. That was against the Pittsburgh Steelers. That was a rainy game, if I remember correctly. He's kind of boom or bust right now against Denver. I mean, that is against Denver, but he only put up 15 points on 11 targets. Whereas last week against the Dolphins, He put up 36.3 points. Now, that was on Thursday Night Football, so people have kind of forgotten about that a little bit. It's been a little while since that game. He's had some more time to prepare for this game. He goes on the road against Dallas. Dallas is not the best defense in my opinion, but they kind of do play the ball control game where Dallas loves to just keep the ball for as long as they can. So that really doesn't go in AJ Green's favor, of course. I just think that, if you can get anybody if you can get AJ Green below 10% owned in a tournament at his caliber, you have to play him in some lineups. So he's a sleeper this week for sure, but I think he has huge upside just like he does every week. He's coming off a huge game. His price didn't go up that much, so I like AJ Green a lot. All right, so last but not least here, I have Ryan Tannehill. And the reason he's interesting me so much is because of his price. Again, this is a value video. At $5,700, it's almost the cheapest price he's been all season. And again, especially for a quarterback and the way you're building lineups this week, you want to spend down at certain places other than wide receivers so you can pay up for those big name wide receivers. I think Ryan Tannehill's in a good situation here. He's in a very similar situation, I think, to when he faced the Cleveland Browns, and he came through for everybody who played him in cash games. He put up 25 points, 3 passing touchdowns. He did have 2 interceptions, and it took him a little while to get going in that game, but he still came through nonetheless. He's playing against the Tennessee Titans, who I think are a better defense than the Browns as we speak at least. But again, he's playing at home. It's only his second home game on the year. The price is right, I think, and I'm really considering stacking Ryan Tannehill with Jarvis Landry in a cash game. Now, it's definitely going to be the ideal situation if Arian Foster does not play. If Foster does not play Ryan Tannehill. Whether you want to play him in a cash game or in a big tournament situation, that's completely up to you. But I think I like him in a cash game more. I'm not expecting him to put up a ton of points, but I'm expecting him to put up enough points, especially with Landry, to kind of make it worth playing him and paying up at other positions like I mentioned. So, he does have some rushing upside. He had a rushing touchdown early in the season against the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, Tennessee is kind of, they're kind of an average defense. There's not a ton that they are great at, but they're kind of just okay at everything. So, this could be a game where we see Ryan Tannehill shut down. I don't see it. And like I said, for me, it all comes down to Arian Foster. If Arian Foster does not play, the Dolphins have zero to little run game. And the run game is really not even that good with Arian Foster, especially if he's banged up with that groin injury. So I think I'm going to play Ryan Tannehill. Stay up to date on my Twitter. But right now, Tannehill is a guy that, it pains me every time I put him in a lineup because, he's one of those guys that a lot of people just don't think is good at football. And, I may be of that group. I don't know. But, I think he's just too cheap not to play this week. And, at home, everything is pointing in the right direction for him to have at least a somewhat decent game. All right, so that's going to do it for this week's sleeper and value picks. Hope you guys enjoyed. Again, I just want to give out a quick thank you to everybody who's subscribed and everybody who's liking and watching these videos. A lot more work goes into these videos than you guys think, but I really appreciate it. Just hit the 600 subscriber mark in less than 2 weeks of making videos, which is pretty incredible. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. And hopefully moving forward, you guys will continue to watch. And hopefully moving forward, myself and you guys can win money with some of these picks that I give out. So thank you again for watching, and I will catch you guys later.